And so we thought that it would be a great way for people to get the same information that is sometimes on our intranet, but we know that they would definitely see it every month. And so it was kind of nice because we actually already had a platform in place for creating this newsletter. And I'm happy to share. I don't remember the name off the top of my head of the platform that we use, but I think Melissa said she was going to share our email. So if anyone is interested in what we're using, I'm happy to share that and kind of we have our first edition. So I can also share that with you if you'd like. And then one of the other things that our health commissioner and assistant health commissioner started doing when we started working remote was having virtual all staff meetings. And they really scheduled these as a way to keep our staff updated on our agency's role in COVID and just general updates for our agency. And even though the call was a lot about updates, you could still see everybody participating, everybody would get on. So it was just nice to kind of all be in the same space virtually. Originally, we would only have about 2 staff meetings a year, and because of the size of our conference room, we would always have to be broken up into 2 time slots. So these virtual meetings are nice because, like I said, everyone's able to be on at the same time. And so again, even though we're not physically together in the same room, just being there virtually and being able to ask questions all at the same time was just a really nice way to be able to connect with everybody. And then something else that our assistant health commissioner actually set up was bi-weekly virtual staff lunches, again, just as another way to keep everyone connected and bring people together in a much more informal way. Because sometimes there are a lot of formal things that bring us together, but this was something that's optional for staff that they can attend if they feel like just hanging out and chatting with other people. So you can hop on, eat lunch, and just talk. And I know she's talked about making some of these themes, and one of the things that we've actually talked about on our wellness implementation team is doing like a lunchtime takeover, because pre-COVID, we had actually talked about, this was one of our in-office things, we had talked about doing kind of breakfast and learns for staff in person. And so we kind of brought this idea back, but are altering a little bit to fit more of the needs of our agency right now. And we thought that doing like a lunch takeover would be a perfect way to incorporate some of the stuff that we're thinking about without creating another meeting, so to speak, for people. Some of the things that we've talked about doing for some of these lunches is just bringing different employees in to talk about different topics that they may be an expert in, bringing someone in to do mindfulness exercises for the first 10 or 15 minutes, even doing some type of yoga at lunchtime. But it's really just about providing a little escape for an hour out of our Fridays, every other Friday. So really, you could do anything. But I think just providing that time for your staff to disconnect is really important. And I think it makes it very intentional to kind of step away from your work, because I know I have a tendency to, I'll just sit at my desk, while I'm at home, I'll just sit at my desk and eat lunch, and I don't get up and I don't move around, or I don't talk to anyone. So one of the other things that we have talked about doing, and this was again kind of pre-COVID, and we're figuring out how to move forward during COVID, but we've talked about creating quiet spaces for staff. Like I said, we're kind of hoping to bring that back to the table. Even though we do have staff that are working remotely, it can be nice for those who are in the office just to have a place to escape for even 5 minutes if you want to sit in silence, if you want to do some coloring, if you want to do some journaling, I mean, whatever. We haven't exactly figured out total logistics of that, but just having a space where people can go. And thinking, especially when it starts to get colder, we have a lot of people who normally take walk breaks, and once it gets colder, they may not have the opportunity to do that. So just providing other alternatives for people who need those small breaks throughout the day. And kind of going along with that, really promoting taking those breaks. So like I said, we have a lot of people at our agency that, again, before COVID, you would see a lot of people who would take walking breaks throughout the day. And I think it's really important to encourage staff to take those breaks to get up and move. I know, especially working from home, promoting getting up and moving even more, because I've realized that when I do work from home, I'm moving so much less than I am when I'm actually in the office. I live in a very small apartment, so it takes about 15 steps to get to the bathroom and about 5 steps to get to the kitchen. Unlike in an office where I have to walk down the hallway a further way to get to the kitchen. Um, and if I'm having a meeting with someone, I'll have to walk to go to the meeting, whereas when I'm at home, I'm sitting in the same spot, not moving. So really promoting being intentional about taking those breaks is really important. And then just a few other small things that we've talked about. And something, well, this is actually something that was done recently by my boss, is coloring books and pencils to take. She went to the dollar store, she bought some coloring books and some pencils, and she threw them in our break room, and left a little note about self-care. And by the next Monday, I think they were all gone. So just providing those small opportunities for people to take something that's fun to do, to give their mind a break for a minute. And then just one other small thing that we have talked about, we haven't implemented, but I think it's a really cool idea. And it was something that one of our wellness implementation team members had brought to the table, that she had done somewhere else. It was called BYOB, so bring your own blanket lunches. And it's just a fun way to get outdoors and take a break from work. So it's like a bring your own blanket lunch. So you go to a park or a green space and bring your blanket, and you can just hang out and talk with other people. And I think it's even more of a plus that it's outside, so you can be socially distant outside and eat your lunch. But those are just some of the things that we have done at our agency. And I think to close, I just want to say that if you're just starting out and trying to find ways to connect and promote self-care, it's not bad to start small. That's kind of where we were. You know, we had all these great ideas, but obviously COVID kind of killed all of that. But we're trying to come back, and we're trying to find new, different ways to do what we had originally planned, but just in a different way. And even if you don't have, if you're doing things and you don't have that many people participating in things at first, I think even making the effort to set the things up shows that you care and that you're taking the time to make sure others have what they need in order to be able to recharge and reset and do their job well. So thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. That's great. I mean, that brings up an important point. What works for some may not work for others. And so it's great to have, you know, choices. People love choices. Gives them a sense of control and, you know, allows them to figure out what they need to do to meet their needs. So I wanted to tell everybody, because I forgot to mention that I was going to record this because we had some folks who weren't able to get into the session. We reached our limit, and so I told them that I would have a recording. So just so you guys know that if you decide to ask a question, that will also be recorded. We are gonna open it up for a couple minutes for questions for Olivia, and you can choose to put those in the chat box, and I'll relay those to Olivia, or if anybody wants to just, you know, come forward with a question. Okay, you must have done a really good job doing everything, which you did.
Like I said, I'm happy if you share my email and people have any questions or anything like that. You feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much. And if somebody thinks of something, as you know, as time goes on, just put it in the chat box and we'll make sure your question gets answered. So next up, we have Lori Watkins. Again, she's from Claremont County Board of Developmental Disabilities, and she's going to share the strategies that they've used that she's used with staff during this time.
Hello. Well, I'm really glad to see everybody's names and some of your faces. It's tough to do these Zoom meetings when you don't even get to connect with people visually because we have so many people on, but I'm glad that you're all here. Our group also participated, as Melissa mentioned, in the learning community. And we struggled for a little while trying to decide what we were going to do. And we came up with this great plan in January. We did this health and wellness plan. It was for the whole agency. We created gathering rooms. We were going to have family sessions and get-togethers on the weekend. We opened our gathering rooms with this grand opening on March 6th, and we closed on March 13th. And so probably 5% of our staff were in the building and the rest of the people went home. So we tried to come up with some plans based on that original plan that would allow to connect people. So everybody got Zoom or some platform. And we tried to hold cafes or something like that that would be sponsored by different people. So Holly did a happy hour after work, and Scott talked about vacation plans that weren't, and all kinds of different topics. We had lunch, someone had a lunch every week, somebody had a coffee as a break, and that went for a while. And then I think, just like you have all seen, we lost our mojo, and it takes its toll. And I think a key thing to remember is that this is not normal. And just because we figured out how to adapt to it, it doesn't make it normal. It still makes it about us all trying to get through together. And so part of what our department fell back on was that old school social work fundamental of supervision. Communication was a big issue in our agency. I think it's an issue universally, and then you go remote and that makes it even harder. And so our agency also is very multidisciplined. And so social work is not the predominant discipline here. And so the concept of weekly or biweekly supervision was not one that everybody here was familiar with. And so falling back on my old social work roots and getting back to, we maintained weekly team meetings with our entire department, something kind of like what Olivia said. When we first started that, a lot of our folks said, how could we even talk for an hour every week? And now we talk for 2+ hours easily every week and have to get off. So maintaining and building that communication with your staff and just allowing it to be, I think reminding ourselves that extreme times calls for extreme measures, but in terms of flexibility and extending grace. And if we want to receive the grace as we struggle through our own adaptation to this, we need to extend it. How we treat our staff is how our staff will treat their clients. And so trying to create that safe place where it'll be okay. We will figure it out. We will all get through it. My staff knows me, and I will still get calls where they're panicked because the bus ran late or they couldn't get back from their mom and dad's where they were dropping their children off for daycare that day. And it's fine. It's all going to be fine. I think not using this pandemic as an opportunity to micromanage or manage performance issues, whereas I'm not suggesting at all that we should not shirk our duties in any way, shape, or form, but for that mom who is home trying to do her job and manage 4 kids, that is a totally different existence than I have. And I can't overlay that standard, my availability, onto what she's doing. I need to support her and give her the freedom where she has to wait until the end of the day and her kids are down to finish something. That's okay. And we just have to create that safe place in order for it to be. This is where you can really draw on that, your old training about whether you're doing administrative, educational, clinical, or supportive supervision. Schedule your supervision, whatever your system allows for, regularly, and honor it even though it's Zoom, because we still have great conversations and give people the chance to process the craziness that they're living. I don't know that people have a lot of opportunity to actually process that, even if they're home, even when they're with their families, even if they can get their dogs on their lap, it still seems that we're all on different cycles because we're all managing it differently. And looking back over time, it does seem like you seem to cycle. Like you'll think, I've got this, I've got my work going, everything's good. And then you spend 7.5 hours a day on Zoom and you cannot sustain that. So then you crash and you think, oh my gosh, we're never going to get out of this. I didn't get to take my vacation this summer. So it is very cyclical. The problem is that every single person is on a different cycle. So taking that step back and just allowing each other the opportunity to have conversations about it, to process between yourselves, to process the social unrest and the uncertainty that makes people feel, to process the fear that they have about their own personal family members and what they're doing with managing their children or managing their parents. I have parents in South Carolina who think that they're traveling and they're going to come see us. I can't seem to get that across that I don't feel like that's a really good idea. So giving folks the opportunity to maintain that supervision and know that you're available and that they can count on you and that you're modeling it. So that whole concept of what Olivia was saying about sitting and working for 7 or 8 hours straight, you should not tell your staff they should do one thing and then turn around and do it differently. So if you want people to take vacation, even if you're not going to Michigan this summer, you should still take some time. If you don't want people to work 60 hours a week sitting in front of their computer, you should establish your boundaries and get off and encourage them to do the same. I think just creating that safe space where people know that the efforts that they're making to adapt their environment to get through this are appreciated and valued. All set kind of a meaningful standard that you can share across the board. Don't ask your staff to do things you're not willing to do. If you have the ability to work from home and your staff have to report, you might want to think about how you manage that because that feels awkward. On the other hand, if you're working from home and your staff is home with kids and is just, man, if I could get into the office for a couple of days, how could I do that? The ability to help them figure out and make that safe and see if your system will allow that to happen is a valuable thing to advocate for them and to help each and every person do what they need to do in order to survive, because we are all fundamentally living this trauma. And we can tell ourselves we're fine, and we can tell each other we're fine, and we probably are, but this is still impactful. And it impacts us, and it impacts our clients, and we're all kind of like those Dodgem cars that just keep bumping into one another. And processing that is as important, if not more so now, than processing the challenges of your position before you ever even got, before COVID ever hit. So I think that's really the bulk of what I wanted. I wanted to throw in the old school supervision mentality, and everybody had lots of great ideas through the learning community. As we get back into fall and our school comes back, we also are going to try to re-engage and do some of those Zoom cafes, lunches types of things. But control what you can control, and that's your own individual staff and your supervision and your time with them and your support of them. And ask for what you need, because if you can ask and explain and express to your staff the support or the frustration you're feeling and that you need someone to talk to just to share how frustrating this is, it'll be more likely that they will be able to reciprocate that and recognize that this is a safe place to do that. So that's it.
Thanks, Lori. I really like that you hit strongly on establishing psychological safety for your staff so that they felt and feel comfortable expressing how they're doing, how they're feeling about this whole thing. So it's not just about the clients, it's about them. And using that time in supervision, I think is really valuable, as well as, like you said, adding additional supervision. so that people can keep that dialogue going and they're not just processing it on their own. So I think that that's really valuable. Does anybody have any questions for Lori, or need more information about any of the topics that she talked about?
Lori, did you, and you're talking about embedding self-care within supervision, and did you provide any guidance or PD or skill building or anything with your supervisors to be able to do that?
We did. So we went through Sanctuary, which is a trauma-informed care organizational change model before we did the Tri-State Trauma Network Learning Community. And so our staff had already been educated and trained on the concept of self-care plans and crisis plans. And so it was beneficial in your supervision then to have conversations about it. But your self-care plan looks a lot different now than it did 3 months ago. So the ability to go out and have dinner with friends or disconnect, maybe we should revise them. Again, do you do that all the time? No, but it's that tool. It's the recognition that you knew your staff were educated on that concept and the fact that they needed those plans. Those were requirements back in our sanctuary when we first started it. And so it was a familiar thing to come back to if people were struggling, to say, remember, this would be helpful if you could update that and look back at it. So yes, we were familiar with those prior to COVID.
Thank you. And I will say that this isn't exactly the same as what you're talking about through Sanctuary, but we are offering at the end of September 25th, a 3-hour training on burnout, secondary trauma, and self-care. And so the presenter for that will be touching on some different methods of self-care that will help people to develop self-care plans. And so just wanted to put that out there in case anybody's looking for more education on that and hoping to provide that for either themselves or their staff.
They do tie together well, Melissa, because those self-care plans all touch on those components of safety, physical, moral, social, the fourth one, which I always forget. So they're all tied together. Any of these training models, those all kind of fit together.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to move along to Allison Savage with the Mayerson Center for Safe and Healthy Children, as well as Joining Forces. Go ahead.
Thanks, Lori and Olivia. First of all, I want to give 2 shout outs. One to Mickey. I don't know, well, obviously you wouldn't know this because it's on my screen, but you have been in the center of my screen the whole time. And I just want to say that it makes me happy to see your smiling face, even though I don't think we have ever met, but I just wanted to let you know that it made a difference that you have a picture of yourself smiling on there. So thanks, Mickey. And then I also wanted to say to Veronica, your sunflower picture, that also brought a smile to my face, and especially being inside all day long and on the computer and everything, it was really nice to see a little bit of nature. So thank you, Mickey, and thank you, Veronica, for your awesome pictures. Next, I want to invite all of you. I know that we've been sitting and you've been listening or checking email or on your phone or whatever it is, but you're probably with a screen in front of you. And so I invite everyone to take a minute to stretch. I invite you to actually stand up. And I'm going to turn off my video for a second. And I'm going to stretch right along with you. So I invite you to listen to your body, and whatever feels tight or whatever feels like you need to stretch, go ahead and take a minute to stretch it out. All right.
That was a
Now
great,
I feel better.
awesome. Thank you. I needed that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I've been on meetings all day long today, so it was nice to stand up for a second. All right, so at the Meyerson Center for Safe and Healthy Children, we see a lot of, we're a child advocacy center, which is where kids, if they've disclosed abuse, they can come and they can get basically a medical evaluation, forensic interview, receive mental health treatment, get connected to services, what have you. But so our staff have listened to a lot of really traumatic experiences regularly, every day, hearing things that are happening, hearing things that are going on around the hospital. If a child is admitted for abuse or complications due to abuse, then our staff are hearing about it. So needless to say, we have a lot of, there's a lot of secondary trauma that is being experienced by our staff. So we know that just doing a couple of interventions or just doing things every once in a while and kind of patchworking together some sort of self-care plan isn't really going to cut it, especially for the depth of secondary trauma and experiences that our staff have experienced. So we have really tried to look at self-care as embedding it within our system instead of just a set of interventions that we're trying to do. And so one of the ways that we have done that is to look at embedding self-care within our standing meetings. And so it's not just something that is piecemealed, but it's something that is a reminder, at least for 2 of our meetings, we have our medical staff and our clinical staff, so our social workers and our doctors and our nurses who all meet together every day, and they are taking the first 5 minutes within that meeting to embed some sort of self-care activity within that. And then we also have our operations meeting, which is all of our staff throughout our department. And we're embedding at the beginning of that meeting something to do with self-care, so that way it's on everybody's mind, and it's not something that can be easily forgotten. So, and those activities range from like a mindfulness activity. It might be something fun. It might be, sharing just a reflection that I found on the internet and just asking people to reflect on that. It might also just be a connection piece to get to know each other a little bit better. One of the ways that we kicked off some of these, one of our team members had an idea to do the Zoomy Awards. Has anybody ever, I don't know why I'm asking this because I can't see any of your faces, but if you've ever, we did the Zoomy Awards. So we came up with different categories and all of our staff could nominate people for these awards. They were things like most Zoomogenic, and most likely to talk when on mute, and most likely to, so it was like a lot of fun, and we had a lot of people that participated, and me and my other team member really did it up. Like we even got like envelopes, and we opened up envelopes, and when we gave the awards, and it was like this whole big thing, and it was a lot of fun. So we've done like those sorts of fun team building kinds of things, as well as the daily or regular reminders. And then we're also looking at creating a more cohesive plan moving forward. And one of our newest team members comes in with some expertise in positive psychology and strengths. And so we're looking to embed that and coming up with the plan of every 6th operations meeting, we take over the whole meeting and we do a connection point, or it's not really a professional development opportunity, but it's really just being able to do some sort of activity that embeds looking at everyone's strengths, how they can use those strengths on a daily basis, how do they come out. And then really, after a conversation that we had today, I think the thing that we have not really focused on so far that really needs to happen is how we are all connected to each other. And it's more than just like we're all here together as a team, but really looking at how do we, how does my actions impact my coworker? How do her actions impact me? And how are we all working together and meshing well within this system, and making sure that we're calling out different people's strengths as we see them and making it more organic. So we don't want it to feel like this is just another initiative that is starting, or that this is just another thing that's going to start and then fizzle out. We want it to be organic, and we want people to be able to be authentic and being able to recognize each other, because being seen and being heard and being seen, it definitely falls right in line with like trauma-informed care, being able to recognize staff, but then also just knowing how good it feels to be recognized and to be seen, and not only just what that strength was or giving that staff member a kudos, but then also following up with what was the impact of that. You know what, when I saw you, like for example, you know, the one of our administrative staff who welcomed in a family, and they did a wonderful job of showing compassion. You know what, you did a great job showing compassion, and now look, that family feels a lot more comfortable to be here today for their appointment. So making sure that that impact statement is embedded in there. Those are some of the things that we were talking about today. So we're looking at doing that and coming up with our core plan within the Meyerson Center, and around like, you know, some of those positive psychology, strengths building, looking at getting the foundational of like, how do we even define self-care? What does it mean to us? What are some of those core components that we want to emphasize? Because our grand plan and what our idea is to be able to spread this throughout the hospital. So we want to be able to do it really well here first within Meyerson, and then being able to, you know, if another division comes to us and says, you know what, we really need stuff to do with self-care, we need something to do with staff well-being, and we want to be able to say, okay, well, here's what we did, and here's the language that we used, and here's how we can help you implement this within your department as well. So that's what I mean by like systemically. We don't want it to just be a couple of things that we're implementing here and there. We want it to impact each individual within our department. We want our whole entire culture of our department to be able to be impacted. And then we want that to be able to spread throughout the hospital. And then we also want to be able to help other people outside in the community with being able to implement these sorts of things as well. So systemically, we're trying to really create a culture of self-care, because especially in our field, it's all too often that like, it's just accepted that this job is hard. It's just accepted that there's going to be an emotional impact when it doesn't have to be, when we can do things in order to help each other, and to be able to have people stay in the field longer, and not only stay longer, but also be effective for longer as well. Yeah, so I think that's it in a nutshell of what it is that we are trying to do. Does anybody have any questions or comments about any of that?
A couple people really loved your Zoomy idea. I saw a couple of things in the chat box, and I did too. I was like, oh my gosh, Zoomogenic, what a great word.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
I saw the video, and it's a good argument for humor, because those people laughed during that thing that I have seen in a long while.
Yeah, it was so much fun. We did the Zoomy, and then we even yeah, it was a lot of fun. I would highly recommend it.
That's awesome. That's something, yeah, everybody could easily implement. So I don't think that you mentioned Trinity.
Oh yeah, Trinity. I forgot. I can't believe I forgot Trinity. We have a therapy dog that we were able to use. She is a golden lab, and she is just absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, she came to us like right before the pandemic hit, so got used to seeing her every day, and she was right next to my cubicle and got used to seeing her every day, and now I can't. But yeah, we have a therapy dog, and she has made such a difference, not only with the staff. I mean, she's a therapy dog for her staff, not only just for the kiddos that are coming in. But there's been multiple times when her presence has allowed a child to be able to feel a lot more comfortable and come back to their appointment. So Trinity has had a huge impact, for sure.
That's awesome. Does anybody have any questions that they want to either come forward with or put in the chat box for Allison?
I want to go back to the Zoomy Awards. So were you the brainchild of this?
I did not come up with that idea. It was one of my team members that came up with the idea, and then we both kind of developed it from there.
It's so awesome.
It was so fun. We sent out, like, everybody cast their votes through Sign Up Genius. We just sent out like a survey, and then you could write in or click in. I forget how we exactly did it, but I think it was a write in. And then people could nominate. So even the nominations were anonymous. And then we even like made announcements like we were at the major movie awards. And I mean, we went a little over the top with it, but it was a lot of fun.
You did stuff during the week too, where you sent out, like, everybody share in this group what your favorite drink or your favorite. Didn't you have something like that you did as well?
Yeah, we sent out regular emails and just little connection points for folks around like what it, we did like one, sent out a photograph and said, recreate this photograph using what you have at home, and it was just like putting yourself there. Or it was like, share a favorite photograph from a recent vacation, or what's your best bad dad joke that you have, or just like all kinds of different stuff, ranging from like more like serious get to know you stuff, and then more just fun, humorous things to do. One other thing that we did was we did our own Nailed It contest. And if you've ever seen that show on TV, it's where people like, they bake something that's pretty complicated and then see how it turns out. And so we hosted our Nailed It contest, and that was pretty fun. Where people we chose a picture, and then people baked their own cake, and then they would send in their picture, and then we all voted on which one was the best.
You've been so creative through this. You really have.
Yeah. Good job. So there's a question in the chat box that's kind of out here for everyone. Someone is interested in hearing what others think about employees opting to never be on camera, and if that's a concern for anyone. Is that a point of concern about their well-being, or is it something we should just let slide because we're in an unusual set of circumstances working virtual?
Yeah, I think it all depends too. I think it is nice sometimes. Like sometimes I just don't want to be on camera. It's exhausting to have to always be, on or camera ready. And so sometimes it really is nice, but to have it to be always off, if you are concerned about a staff member, absolutely always reach out. And hopefully that there is a culture of caring and noticing those sorts of things so that folks will reach out. It also depends on the environment. Like I teach at Xavier, and the professor has a policy where you have to have your camera on for class. So I think it depends on what kind of environment you're working on as well.
I heard somebody talk recently about this, and they said, when you're watching yourself speak or looking at yourself, you tend to spend a lot of time looking and critiquing yourself, and so it takes away some of your attention. And so that's why it's okay to let people not be on camera. Like you said, you might just feel like I don't want to be watching myself talk this whole time, or I'm paying too much attention to my own gestures and facial expressions, and that's taking away from me paying attention to the content of the training or class or meeting that's going on. but yeah, I agree that too, though, that if somebody's never getting on camera, reaching out to them to say, is everything okay? We just want to make sure that you're doing okay, because we never see your face and we can't, tell if you're doing okay. Because, you could go for months now without seeing somebody and you wouldn't really know how they were doing just by hearing their voice.
We were in a meeting with Mary Beccario last week where she referenced either current research or something that someone was working on, where this whole Zoom effect, you're constantly trying to find the rest of people's bodies and how disconcerting it is. And when she first said it, I thought, oh gosh, there goes a Mary, one of her Marys. But now that I go through these Zoom meetings, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's true. Like, you really are like, where's the rest of you? What are you doing? So it was an interesting commentary on the subconscious effect of only seeing heads or names.
I would like to hear from other folks. What are some of the things that you all have been doing within your agencies for self-care?
And feel free to put those in the chat box if you'd rather not come forward with them.
I can go really quick.
Okay.
This has nothing to do with me, but we were able to give our staff, we do have essential workers, including my staff and I, but we just kind of take turns. But we were able to give pandemic pay to the people that never got to stop working at all, but didn't get to work from home. I also have put self-care into every single team meeting. I'm a director of clinical services and all my staff are social workers. So at the beginning, when I started asking every week about self-care, there were kind of blank faces and everybody was like, I don't know. My staff is really young. So we started having conversations, and now every week people know that they have to say what they did. So then it holds everybody accountable. And so we kind of check in about what we did that week or what we're going to do the next week to make sure we're focusing on that always. And there's no more blank stares anymore. So that feels pretty awesome. Also, when we're there together, I always try to find somebody who can go at the same time as me, because we can't all be gone together, but we just take walks and just get out and enjoy the weather right now. So
Awesome.
Little things, but
thank you for sharing. We have a few things in the chat box too that I'll read. Erin talked about how she's teaching yoga on their library Facebook page and mindfulness segments on Instagram. And then somebody else said regular exercise and social distant meet up with friends. Someone else shared we have a standing program staff meeting on Thursdays, and we've started having dance parties at the end of each meeting. That's great. It's a fun way to get people moving. Awesome.
How have you done that? How have you implemented the dance party? How do you get people to get up and get moving?
That was from Jenna. Jenna?
Yeah.
Oh, her microphone's not working. Okay. Well, maybe you can let us know in the chat box if there's, how you got people to do that. Maybe you just picked some really good songs that they couldn't help but dance to. Somebody else was talking about we continue to have highlight parties where there are goodies left in the break room for anyone to enjoy, and an email gets sent out for that department or individual. Crosswords are handed out in mailboxes, candy bars in mailboxes too. Somebody else said sending encouraging texts to staff, especially extroverts who need contact or staff who live alone. Great idea. Wellness tips and challenges get sent out. Cool. We had some craft parties and a Harry Potter trivia party via Zoom. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, so those are some great ideas as well. And that is all we have in the chat box. Thanks to all those who shared. Oh, okay, so here's Jenna talking more about the dance party. It's not required, but most people are pretty into it. I pick a song and encourage folks to join. and tell them if they don't join, then they just have to sit and watch my awful dance moves.
Jenna, I'm definitely stealing that idea. Jody, get ready. We're dancing in the next ops meeting.
That's great. So, and then somebody else shared that they had a virtual bridal shower. That's a great way to still have those celebrations with staff, even though you're not in the office together. So, lots of great ideas. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. So, just a couple minutes left. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Oh, somebody popped up with they're having a virtual retirement party this week. Somebody had a physically distanced car trunk lunch. Nice. Good way to stay safe but still see people in person. Lots of group texts. Very cool. Right.
Has anybody thought, like, with all of these ideas being sparked up, has anybody thought of any new ideas since we've been sitting here of things that you want to try?
I guess not. I'll mention, a couple other things coming up for Tri-State Trauma Network before everybody leaves us. We do have, I mentioned the thing on the 25th on burnout and self-care, but we also have our annual fall conference coming up, which we're doing virtually for the first time, and that is going to take place over 2 days so that it's split up and allows people to spend less time in front of a computer. It's really hard to spend, those 8 or so hours in front of the computer. So October 29th and November 10th are the 2 dates. We encourage you to attend both, but you can also just do one day if you choose. And our keynote speaker is Laura Vandernoot-Lipsky, who wrote the book Trauma Stewardship and also started the Trauma Stewardship Institute. We are excited to have her joining us and talking more about, recognizing things like becoming overwhelmed and burnt out, and how to, build cultures along the lines of what we were talking about today that, help care for you and you care for each other and have that sort of collective support, as well as take care of your own individual needs. So she does a great TED Talk, and I think she'll be a fantastic speaker. So you can go to our website for registration links and more information on that. And you'll also see that we have coming up our Trauma Responsive Care Certification Series, and that is 8 days over 7 months, where you'll take a deep dive into the neuroscience of trauma, and as well as learn about interventions from our local trauma guru, Mary Vicario, and some of her staff that does consulting for the series, as well as some of the training pieces. I know there's some people on here who've been through that, so it's good to see some of your names here. And it's a great offering if you're ready to take that deep dive and really figure out how you want to better serve, whoever's coming to you for help with their trauma. You don't have to be in a therapy role. We have had people from all different types of roles within agencies. And so don't think that that's just for clinicians, because by no means is that true. So again, more information on that is on our website, tristatetraumanetwork.org, and on the events page. So we did have a couple more things come in. I'll just mention those real quick. Somebody's going to try virtual parties. Great. Somebody's going to try the lunch takeover and bring your own blanket. And somebody's creating a wellness room at the public library. because it's daunting working with the public at this time. And somebody else said they're going to redo their break room to make it more relaxing. So glad that we inspired people to try some new things today as well. And I want to thank again Allison Savage, Lori Watkins, and Olivia Riley for agreeing to lead the discussion with their ideas. And if you three want to just stay on for a couple minutes, if you have a moment, we can just wrap up. And the rest of you are free to go. Have a great afternoon, and we hope to see you at an upcoming training. Thanks. Lots of thank yous in the chat box too. People are still kind of trickling out. Well, I'm not going to say anything super private. I thought you guys did a great job. I just wanted to hear, you know, how you thought it went. I think, you know, we ended up using all the time and got some good engagement there towards the end with people sharing ideas and asking a couple questions. How do you guys feel about how things went?
I thought it went well. It's always nice to hear